Alright, Mort here, and it is time for the patch 16.1c rundown. This is our holiday patch, last bit of changes we're making after the Paris Open as we head into our holiday break before we
Oh, he's at
resume
the riot
normal
office.
patch schedules in 16.2 in January. Generally, the meta is decent. If you already saw the morning meta report, I don't need to recite everything from that again. But just some light adjustments and things that we can continue to buff up to make more things possible to play. So yeah, let's dive right in. First off, on the Bilgewater side, generally we're pretty happy with Bilgewater's state overall, except the items right now are spiking a little too hard.
Bilgewater's
especially
super
on the
OP.
defensive item side. So what we're going to do is take Barnacles and lower the armor and MR it gets from 45 to 35, which is a pretty chunky nerf considering it's actually like tripled at a certain health point and things like that. So that's a pretty chunky nerf to Barnacles. Pile of Citrus also is another one that was giving 700 health and was snowballing you.
This item's really OP as
we're
well.
Getting the 20 bonus serpents.
Pile of Citrus.
So we're going to change that to 600 health and 10 bonus serpents. Finally, First Mate's Flintlock. That one was just a little over budget compared to some of the other damage ones. So the attack speed that it had, which was only 10%, is going to get removed. So light nerf there, but otherwise nothing too crazy. And then finally, 10 Bilgewater was just overperforming for how strong it's
Volume
supposed
up,
to be,
it's max.
especially compared to some things like 10 Noxus. So 10 Bilgewater is going to have its cannon damage lowered from 750 to 500. So should get it more in line with the other prismatics.
Wait a second. I just realized something. It's not Barnacles, it's Barnacles because Bilgewater is aquatic themed. So I've been... Oh, I get it. Okay, sorry. There's some wordplay here that just went straight over my head. Yeah, this is all good nerfs. This is all good nerfs in the sense that the items not only are individually powerful, when you put them in totality together, it's big, right? It's the value of Barnacles with First Mate's Flintlock, and you get Pilot Citrus, and you just get everything together. It's just way too much. There's also other ones that are also good, like Dead Man's Dagger. I think some of the other items are also really good. So it's just to take Bilgewater down a peg, which they're way too strong early, or they're way too strong late, excuse me. And if your early game is good enough, you snowball, and you're not actually supposed to spend your serpents if you can help it. If you're high rolling hard enough, you just save all your serpents and just spam 7 Bilgewater items as fast as you can, and then you just win the game.
Noxus 7 is a pretty solid tempo comp. You can play that really well and be pretty aggressive, but it falls off a cliff in the late game. So we're going to make sure that Otacon can be a little tankier in the end game.
Wait. And then Barnacles is because because Bilgewater is, the drunken pirate. And so the Knuckles works well because they're drunken sailors that fight. Wait, it's actually really good.
On stage 4, 5, and 6, you're going to see the health multipliers of the 7 piece.
All right.
Going to scale up here a bit. So hopefully vertical Noxus can be playable. There's also another buff with a champion later, so that should help Noxus. And then finally, the 10 piece is underperforming compared to some of the other prismatics. So the health multiplier is going to go from 40 to 50.
So we're buffing easy. 10 Noxus.
All right, lastly on the trait side is Yordle. Yordle is a trait that is being played a lot at high elo. It's being played to econ. It's being played to generate those extra resources, which is cool. But it's also meant to be played as a reroll comp and should be viable that way as well. So what we're going to do is when you have a 3-star, you get extra bonuses on the trait stats.
Yeah.
We're going to raise that from 50% to 100%, which looks like a big nerf, but it's not that insane.
Big buff.
But overall, what that basically means is you have 6 Yordle, and then, or like, let's say you have a Yordle and then you 3-star it. That basically counts as 2 Yordles for the trait bonus. So you can get that trait bonus pretty big if you've got like 5 or 6 3-stars. And hopefully that should make reroll Yordle a little bit more playable without buffing the fast 8 Yordle version.
Okay, I think reroll Yordle in general, this is a big number. It looks really impressive to get additional bonuses. And it's one of those things too where it helps you snowball. The faster you hit 3-stars, the more likely you are to hit more 3-stars since you can't find them in the shop. So there probably is going to be some people experimenting with 3-star Yordles. It's hard for me to know because I think Yordles is so far below the bar that this might still not be enough, or it could actually make it incredibly snowbally. You get Prismatic Ticket, you find Yordles, you 3-star everything super fast, and then you get to 3-star Fizz and Vagar. The win condition of Yordle reroll isn't try to 3-star just your 1, 2, 3 cost. You also try to 3-star Fizz and the the Veigar if you can. So we'll see. I don't know about Noxus. Like, this is hard for me to understand how good this is, but 7 Noxus in general is just pretty bad. Like, very, very bad. So I'm okay with this.
All right, on the one cost side, just trying to buff some of the champions that aren't that great of openers here. Caitlyn makes it pretty hard to play things like Piltover. Caitlyn without any attack speed or mana generation just takes way too long to cast her spell. So she's going to go from 0.7 to 0.75 attack speed. And then Sona, very light buff here for Sona, but just compared to some of the other AP options, it makes playing AP in the early game pretty hard. So Sona is going to be able to do a little more damage here, and that'll also help some of the Demacia openers as well.
A little more damage.
Too much, but again, that's why it's a very light touch here.
I thought Caitlyn was already a pretty solid opener. Did anyone else think Caitlyn was a bad opener? I guess it's more that some Piltover openers are just not very playable if you don't get a really good Piltover, 2 Piltover setup. But I kind of thought that Caitlyn's okay. Like, Caitlyn, Kog'Maw, Nico, Vi, isn't that like a fine opener? Or am I missing something? I guess maybe there's not very good. She was bad without long shot. Oh, I thought she was okay, but I guess she was like losing a lot on stage 2. If you're playing Caitlyn 1, yeah, but maybe in general my game. I have very little sample size of openers on the patch, so I can't really speak to it. I actually even haven't played around Caitlyn, but I can't help but notice that every time a Caitlyn 2 casts and kills my backliner, I lose. How much of it do you think is the fact that people, like, Caitlyn's weak, or people are not leaning into making Caitlyn win early game by positioning correctly? If you position Caitlyn to open up people's backlines, I'm pretty sure you win a lot of fights. So, yeah, maybe not. Maybe it's just fake news for me. Okay, who knows?
On the 2 cost side, Orianna has kind of fallen off here. Even in the reroll Ishtal comp where she's played, you almost never itemize her. And so we want to see if we can help Orianna do a little bit more in some of the comps. Maybe you can cook something up. Where
she doesn't transition
cool
well.
Shield comps or some Piltover. So her spell split damage is going to go up a pretty large amount here, 20%. So that's a pretty big buff.
Wow.
So I do want to call that out. Now, it's only the split damage. It's not the primary damage. But still, pretty chunky buff for Orianna. Yasuo reroll is in a bit of a weird spot here. We buffed it last patch, and we're going to buff it again here. We do really want this to be a viable comp, and what we're finding is if you can get it all put together with the Yone 2, the Yasuo 2, on the right Ionia, and get it all going, it's not terrible by any means. Yone is very, very strong. But the problem is you have to play Yasuo. And Yasuo, especially in the early and mid game, just really not doing a lot here. So we're going to put another buff here to make his spell even stronger. If we have to do more from here, it'll have to wait till 16.2. But that should make his spell hit a good amount harder and make him playable before you get that Yone.
Wait, so he has actually AP scaling as well. So they're just buffing it. Well, the thing about Yasuo is that a lot of stats have indicated that Yasuo is not really that good with items. And you'd rather move Yasuo items to Yone once you get Yasuo 3 and then slap a Thieves' Cliffs on him. That might not change, but I'm sure this buff definitely helps. And it could just be the buff that gives enough stability that makes you feel like Yasuo 3 doesn't suck. Because the problem with Yasuo is that he dies a lot, and he doesn't even finish off units in the backline. Kind of like the Fizz problem. So we'll see. I have no idea. I've never even played a successful Yasuo reroll game. I've tried it. I mean, I did it one time in PvE, but it wasn't very good. So we'll see.
3 cost side, Mundo, probably the most forgettable champion in the set right now.
Yep.
Just really isn't doing much. You don't really play him in Bruiser, and Zaun's kind of underperforming with some of the Jinx issues. So we're going to give him a pretty chunky buff here, which is the mana's going to go from 80 to 60.
It's crazy.
And remember, that means he's going to be in the healing state quite a bit. So I actually think this guy could end up being a pretty big menace in the early game. If you can get like a Mundo with some tank items, he could actually be pretty insane to deal with. So definitely give him a try after the patch. I don't know that this is going to like propel him into OP or anything like that, but should make him pretty strong. Gwen is a champion. We're happy with her damage. We actually think Gwen can do a lot, and there's some unsung Gwen comps out there.
She's really
but
underrated.
Man, if she takes its damage, it's just a lot. She kind of falls over pretty quick. So we're going to give her 50 health and 5 armor and MR, just to make Gwen a little bit more durable and let you consider playing a little more fragile items. So something like a death cap can be more viable, rather than having to go the BT and a lot of items to keep her alive. And then finally, LeBlanc. This is the other big Noxus buff. LeBlanc just really isn't shining as much as, say, like Draven or anything like that. We want LeBlanc to be something that if you find an early Scion, you should be excited that like, ooh, I can get access to a LeBlanc and put my AP items. And again, this is meant to help some of those AP openers have a couple more options. So LeBlanc is going to get a nice damage buff here. So she should be a bit scarier. Should put her on par with other champions like Ari, for example.
Yep.
And so hopefully LeBlanc is something you can consider as an unlockable AP opener.
Yeah, it's good because if you have AP items, you pretty much just want to look for Ari, or you want to have like the ideal opener around like Kog'Maw or something like that. So this is another option. And they buff 7 Noxus, so definitely gonna try some LeBlanc openers. She also might be the key to help you get into Freljord and Lissandra a little bit more because she's an invoker. Maybe that's how you kind of tie in LeBlanc, play Scion. Maybe that's how you get Kabuko, so on and so forth. It actually might end up being really good because right now LeBlanc's not very strong early. So, are we back to the arcane side with Mundo Uber Tank? We'll see. We'll see. This patch isn't live yet. We're just basically getting some more dog context.
All right, for cost. Lux. This is actually, I don't know, this one makes me a little nervous, but Lux is a champion that if you invest in and stay there, you kind of end up regretting. Lux just really has trouble getting through the tanks, and she casts a lot, but it takes too many casts to get through and really be a viable threat in the end game.
Yep.
Now, the thing that makes me nervous is buffing Lux just makes it easier to get to like the Annie Silas board. But overall, we think it's healthy to make sure that Lux can be a carry. We want those 4-cost carries to be good. So she's going to get a small buff to her primary spell damage. Misfortune, this is just something that when on PBE we were struggling to make 3-star 4-cost Misfortune do well. She kept being at the bottom.
Her.
Last minute we put in this giant buff that was frankly way too big. She was actually beating some 3-star 5-costs, which is not okay. So we're lowering her 3-star damage quite a bit here from 5,000 to 3,000. She might still be insane. The number might actually be like 2,000 or 2,500 or something. But we just want to make sure that heading into the break, she's not doing too silly of things, especially because she's supposed to be one of the slightly weaker ones. Not like bottom of the barrel, but considering you can kind of like cheat her out with Bilgewater sometimes, she shouldn't be top tier. Nasus. Nasus is not necessarily weak by any means.
Everyone be cool. Hot dude in the chat, Peter Bart.
But considering the difficulty to acquiring him, considering you have to have the Azir, unlock him, and then go back and get him 2-starred.
This one's surprising stronger.
To me. So we're going to make him be able to cast his spell more often here. Hopefully make Nasus feel like the same power level as someone like Renekton.
I actually think Nasus is already very good. I think part of the reason why the data might look bad on Nasus is because you have to lose to get him, which means that you are likely in the Shurima spot where you already are losing, and therefore you're not likely to stabilize because you unlock Nasus, if that makes sense. So it feels like Nasus, this might make Nasus even, like if Rift Herald's getting nerfed, and Rift Herald's the best 4-cost tank in the game, maybe Nasus is now, because I actually think he's already quite good. If you talk about 3 items on 4-cost tanks, there's 3 people in conversation. I mean, Rift Herald was clearly the best one, but then you had Taric, and you had Nasus. And I feel like it was one of those situations where I would probably want to tank Nasus if I had the Shurima set up, because it just made him super tanky. And now I almost definitely will do that, so we'll see. I see 2 hot dudes on my screen. Hey, take it easy, man. Keep it chill. I don't want to be profusely sweating halfway through the stream. Lux, by the way, I think Lux is actually okay and playable. I think part of it is that people weren't positioning correctly. If you look at some of the guys that we set up here, where are we at? You wanted to put Lux in a way where they wrapped around your front line and she could shoot. If you were greedy, you could actually put Garen here and then have Lux cover half the screen because she beams, right? She does like a diagonal beam. So if you had them wrap on the Garen, you could get like maximum positional AoE. And I think part of the problem with Lux is people were not positioning her very, very well. And maybe this damage buff plus people learning will make people play her more, and then the positional change will make her do well. But she's not bad. She is a viable line you can play in 7 Demacia without trying to focus on trying to go for Vayne and without necessarily rushing Silas. So I think it's possible.
All right, Rift Herald. This is probably the biggest nerf in the patch. Obviously, this is meant to address Void. Now, there is not a Baron nerf. We're not going to nerf Baron.
Nope.
We want Baron to be, Baron takes up 2 slots, level 10.
Yeah, he's really good.
Powerful. The challenge is right now we're seeing that Rift Herald on 3-5, which is very common, right? You put in 2 Void at 2-1, you unlock Rift Herald at 3-5, then you have a Rift Herald 1, and that can stabilize you for a long time. Rift Herald is probably the best 4-cost tank by a pretty wide margin.
Yep.
That's
Agreed.
just not really something we want to be healthy. And so we need people to like roll down more, try to stabilize more. And so Rift Herald's going to lose 100 base HP and 5% durability off her spell. This should be a chunky nerf. Now,
it's pretty big.
Is this going to make 10 Void all of a sudden drop significantly in the stats? Probably not, because once you get there, it'll still be strong. We want to let Baron stay strong for the rest of Christmas break at the very least, if you get it there, especially for some of our lower elo players. And then in 16.2, I think we'll do 16.2 or 16.3. We might do a larger evaluation of like how easy is it to get to 10? Is that part of the problem, right? You know, we kind of overdid the amount of econ augments and things like that got added at 4.2. So there you go. That's going to be the Rift Herald Baron nerf, though. It should be a pretty chunky nerf.
Yeah, some people are wondering if they're going to. Oh, I guess this is 2/2, but they're not nerfing Kai'Sa. But that they don't want to kill off Kai'Sa flex boards, because if they nerf Kai'Sa as well, then this, Kai'Sa setup where you can theoretically go 2 Void or 4 Void and splash and other things just dies as a comp, and they also kill vertical Void as well. So they want to make sure not to do that. So I agree with not nerfing Kai'Sa and trying to make Rift Heralds, because part of it was that Rift Herald was just way too tanky, and they're addressing that. And you didn't have to invest much. Like Rift Herald 1 allowed you to push levels to 9, which was insane if you had Kai'Sa 2 and everything else. So now you probably have to just have more.
Singed, obviously a champion that fell off since his PBE
Singed
heyday,
buffs.
Where he was way too good. And overall, we're actually really happy with Singed damage, because he's not meant to be a carry. He's supposed to be a Morello utility off tank that you put something like Morello and 2 tank items on, possibly a Void Staff if you really want.
I see.
But again, he is not meant to be a carry. We're not going to buff his damage. But that being said, he could still be a little bit more durable.
Interesting.
And so we're going to go ahead and buff his spell heal back a bit, mostly at 2-star. 1-star can be accessed pretty early, so we don't want to overkill and buff that too much. That being said, you could argue this is a 20% buff to that spell heal, but it's a tiny number. It's not going to do too much here. But overall, Sin should be a little bit more playable. And again, he's meant to be that Morello off tank. Finally, Skarner. Skarner gets a small buff at 1-star, a sizable buff at 2-star. We still don't think this is going to make him at like Taric levels, but I do think long term that is the goal, is that like Skarner and Taric should be on the same page or same power level, and you want to play them both. So there might be some more work to do on Skarner, but heading into the break, we wanted to give him a little something just to make him a little more competitive there.
Yeah, I think Skarner in general, what's crazy is that we are in a physical damage meta outside of, Void. But there's a lot of people sending Rageblade and Kraken and things like that. You're talking about reroll comps like Tryndamere Ashe, Vayne, the Lucian Senna type dynamics. Obviously, if they're playing Void and, Arcanist, that's not going to be the case. But there's a lot of AD in the meta, and Skarner is not very good into those things. So I think Skarner deserves a buff. Those make sense. I'm kind of happy Singe is not, like, I think Singe was really problematic the way the play pattern worked, but I do think Singe should be better. And I also think this is the buff to Zon. They're buffing Mundo, they're buffing Singe. Maybe Zon is better now.
And then 5 costs. There's actually only 2 here. Aurelion Sol's going to get buffed. He just doesn't feel like he's quite worth it compared to someone like Baron. And so he's going to get more Stardust bonus at the 60, which is pretty early in his thing, and also more true damage bonus at
it looks impressive.
33.
These numbers look impressive.
I think long term, realistically, it might take till like 16.3, but we kind of need to rework Aurelion Sol, because he's so required to have mana items where it's just like spam to try to get up to that 700 level to get those meteors.
Yeah.
And then after that, he's kind of playable. But if you put something like Jeweled Gauntlet or Death Cap on him, you're kind of griefing. And that's not really great. So long term, we know we want to do some more work here, but hopefully this helps him out a little bit. And then T-Hex, this is an interesting one, because generally what we're finding is people are struggling to play Piltover, they're struggling to play T-Hex, and even when they finally do pull it off, they get the right game, they just aren't really they're not like, wow, this is awesome. They're like, it's okay. So we're going to buff it a bit here, and basically this looks like a slight buff nerf, but really this is The laser is better at killing the first thing it hits, and then about the same at hitting the second thing, and then if it hits more than that, it's a little bit worse. Because
Okay.
we don't need T-Hex just like deleting backlines. That's not the goal here, but we do want the T-Hex doing more damage overall. And again, this is meant to be a buff, right? This is a pretty sizable buff.
Interesting.
If you look at the 2-star T-Hex, like this is a 20% damage buff to the laser, which is a big buff, but again, it'll fall off pretty hard. Now, I will say, as somebody who's been playing a lot of Piltover, this could be scary. You combine this with like the Orianna buff, the Caitlyn buff, things like that. Hopefully that makes Piltover good. Long term, there might be some work to do on the 4-piece and the 6-piece of the trait. But who knows? Maybe there's some cool new T-Hex tech you guys can tech up. And then all of this, by the way, is, before we move on from champions, is everything has to be balanced around their unlock conditions. And right now we can't really change unlock conditions, but come 16.2, 16.3, when we can adjust unlock conditions, we may do some more work to make some of these champions a little bit more accessible, so they don't have to be in these weird power states. So,
because another thing too, part of the dynamic of what makes some of the 5-cost quote soup frustrating, again, I don't like using that term, but I understand why people feel that way, is that you can't really get to the T-Hex if you have items for him, so you're forced to play around these because they have no conditions. You're not going to go back and retroactively hold every Piltover unit to try to get there. And so I want things like T-Hex and Aurelion Soul to be more playable. It would be cool, instead of just feeling like you can only play it in these situational spots. So I like them. I look forward to when they rework it. I will definitely try these. I'll definitely try these. I'm doing good so far. What am I averaging today? I'm averaging like a 2.9, except for that one time I played the Zahen hero augment. That shit sucks. But I'm pretty sure if I just try and play like Acel and T-Hex, I feel like these buffs aren't enough personally, and I'm sure that they're gonna still struggle with some of the tempo issues of the meta, because the big problem is that these things are snowball oriented. So we'll see. We'll see.
But that's something we can get to in a patch or two. All right, on the item side, Darken Bow, definitely the one Darken item that I think we missed on. If you looked at the Paris Open stats behind the scenes,
broken.
The Darken Augment was actually the most picked augment by a pretty significant margin because it was a guaranteed Darken Bow. And if you look at the stats, things like Darken Staff would give AP, or Scythe would give AP. Bow was the only one that gave 2 primary stats, right? It gave AD and attack speed, which was a little much. So we're going to gut the AD on it pretty heavily here. It'll still have the attack speed, so because it's meant to be sort of a backline attack speed item, it should still be fine on a champion like Bel'Veth, but doesn't need to have that much extra stats. And then to make up so that maybe you actually choose some of the other Darken items here, Darken Scythe, we're going to double the damage from the proc that it has on it, so that should be pretty cool. And then Darken Staff is actually going to get 1 more mana regen to make it more competitive with some of the base AP items and help those casters get that mana regen they like. So someone like a Lissandra should be much more excited by this item.
Do you guys know that Gold Collector is the best artifact in the game if you don't have... Like, I'm taking out Ornn to make sure you don't farm it. Part of it was the stats look kind of like well distributed. But these things like the Darken Scythe is really bad without Ornn versus Darken Bow, and I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But then Gold Collector is even better than Darken Bow. I did not know that. Attacks and abilities to execute. Oh, it's because it has 40 AD. Oh my goodness. That's a lot of stats.
All right, augments. Salvage Bin Plus can no longer be offered when the player has deadlier blades, deadlier caps, or Heart of Steel. As much fun as it is to build all those stacks and then accidentally break it when you're trying to move it and lose all your stacks, it's just not a good experience, so we're going to block that off. Generally, this is mostly combat augment buffs. Some of the combat augments that were sitting in that 4.6 to 4.8 range. So Belt Overflow, some more health. Comeback Story, some more health. Crash Test Dummies. The dummies are going to have more base armor and MR, making them a little tankier. Crown's Will, more AP and armor. Crimea River, this is a buff. Basically, when the mana regen went from 2 to 3, so that's a big buff, but we're going to delay it by 2 seconds so it's not quite such an insane buff. Mace's Will, 2 more attack speed. Promise Protection, 3% more mana generation. Solo Plate, 5% more bonus health. I'm kind of excited by Solo Plate. I want this augment to be good. Spear's Will, 2% more AD. Golden Dragon, this is another one that's like a really cool augment, but frankly, it's just a little weak. and so its bonus HP is going to go from 500 to 700. Should make it a lot better on 3-2. And then finally, Win Out. This is the one augment nerf. Win Out is an augment that's, definitely at high elo especially, causes some problems when you can
very busted.
Makes, Baron way too good, for example. This and Growth Mindset are the kind of thing that maybe later, excuse me, we might have to adjust or even possibly take out of the game. We're going to do a bigger holistic pass of our econ augments and things like that.
Yeah.
But for the C patch, that's a little too much right now. So for now, we're just kind of throwing out a nerf here. It's a light Band-Aid nerf. We know this isn't going to solve the problem, but this is what we can do for now, given the holiday patch.
Okay. Yeah, no disagreements here. I don't even know. On the original patch notes they sent like right before I saw this video, it said bonus 500, 600, but if it's 500, 700, that's a lot. That's gotta be playable if it's 700.
And then finally, bug fixes. We fixed an issue where Aphelios, Echo, Tryndamere, and Kindred's attacks from their spell would not interact with critical strike chance properly. So this is as an example, if you looked at some of the stats, Aphelios and you put IE on him, would actually cause him to crit less. Did some really weird things.
What?
Certain parts of his spells required IE. It's very weird.
Yeah.
Echo was another example where if you had Echo, it would look like the spell crit from his autos, but it wasn't actually doing more critical strike damage. So generally for all of these champions, this is if you build crit on them, so Aphelios, Echo, Tryndamere, and Kindred, this should be a buff to them. Now, most of the common builds right now aren't building crit, so we don't expect this to all of a sudden make Tryndamere insane or anything like that. It's not like a bunch of people are playing crit Tryndamere right now, but it should open those items up and make them a little bit better.
Man,
and then there
I'm
was a pretty bad bug
again.
where if you took Glass Cannon and then killed an Otacon, that Otacon would become untargetable. Very weird bug, but that should be fixed.
Yeah, yeah, classic. So more saying it shouldn't change much because their itemization isn't around that right now. But part of the reason why that itemization, let's look at Echo, for example. Part of the reason why people are supposed to go for the Rage Blade build on Echo now is because it's bugged. Like, we don't know how good this Echo is because this just literally doesn't work on him. So instead, we go for a Rage Blade build, which is functioning way better. And so, yeah, like that's where there's a bunch of unknowns. This could be a huge deal. We have no clue.
The reason there aren't more bug fixes right now is because, again, we don't want to risk a bug fix going wrong. This is something like Jinx, for example, which we're still struggling with. We talked about that rescript. But if we mess up the code and then go on break, we can't fix it for like 3 weeks. So we really tried to be really safe here, only shipping bug fixes that we were really confident in. So expect more when we get back from the holiday break. And yeah. All right, that is it. This is going to be the end of 2025. So hopefully this is a good patch for you guys to do your climb. If you're on break and getting a lot of games in, I know I'm personally going to try to play a lot because once I get back in the new year, I have to shift my focus onto future stuff. So I want to get as much set 16 enjoyment as I can. And so hopefully this puts the meta in a pretty darn
quitting
good
set
state.
16?
I think overall we had a really, really good launch. Obviously some nitpicks here and there, but this should make it even better as you go into your holiday break and enjoy. So, all right, that's it for me. Hopefully you guys have a great holiday season. Enjoy your family time. Enjoy TFT. And on behalf of the entire team, we hope you've had an awesome 2025.
Thank you, Mort.
And yeah, only other video I might do over break is I might still do a year in review video. I've got to figure out how to plan that. It's definitely a weird year to review, so figuring it out. But yeah. All right, that's going to do it for me. Until next time, take it easy.